Oops. Okay, we'll begin. Welcome, everyone. Good morning. My name is Jose, and I work here at the library at DACC. And today's presentation is number 5 in the series. So if you've been following me throughout this, I'm sure these slides will make a lot of sense, but if you haven't been following me or these slides don't make sense, get in touch with us, get in touch with me, and I'll show you how you could access our previous presentations, or I can talk to you individually if you wish. So I always start with this slide. This is telling you that all our presentations that get recorded are uploaded to this page. And so here's the URL to the Research Strategies Workshop, which is what this series is about. But we also have additional topics that we have presented on. They're all found on this website here. So for your information. So like I said, today's presentation is number 5. Here is the order of the topics we have been going through to give you some context. And they're supposed to be not only sequential, but logical in terms of reinforcing the topics and the concepts from previous presentations so that students can benefit from them all and or individually if they wish. So today we are going to be talking about using what you found. We've already covered 1 through 4, which is coming up with your questions, identifying your topic, how to research, the differences between popular and scholarly sources, and how to evaluate all resources students encounter. And now, towards the end, today's presentation is focused on how students can benefit from, I should rephrase that. Today's presentation offers suggestions and advice to students on how they could more directly identify and utilize what they find in their resources into their writing or whatever outcome they may have. It could be a presentation. So now that you have the resources and the information, how do you use that? That's what today's presentation is about. So this slide here is just identifying, before I go into today's presentation, about our library's homepage. Please visit us if you haven't already, because lots of information can be found on this page. 2 specifically areas I want to highlight are indicated by the arrows. And so the top arrow just tells you our URL, our homepage of the library. And the second arrow pointing down lists the link to our presentations that I showed you previously in the last slide or the one before that. So just to give you some context and a home base to get us started. So using what you found, how do you best ensure that what you find, okay, because we've already gone through the process of searching and identifying and evaluating and establishing credibility and authority. Now it's like, okay, you have these resources. How are you going to use them? How do you use them? So some students struggle with that. You know, they sometimes may think that just having a bibliography, but not using those resources directly in their writing, for example, is good enough or is acceptable, and it's not, at least not in college. So I'm going to offer several suggestions on how students can benefit on that a little bit better, right? And the first one is getting organized. This is a theme that continues to come up in all our presentations because it's very important, right? Those of us in the library field have been doing it for a while, understand for the most part the structure of information and how it's produced and disseminated, but some students may not understand that, and so getting organized, I cannot stress enough, is very important. And I wrote here, not just when writing, but throughout the whole process. In fact, I mentioned this previously that, you know, you want to do a lot of this stuff way in advance, at least as ahead of time as possible as you can, because you want to give most of your time, you want to dedicate most of your time actually doing the writing and the editing and the revising. That's where you want to spend most of your time. So if you're organized, you can get there, I believe, quicker, more efficiently, right? Whereas if you're not, it'll be it can be confusing, right? So I will be talking about how to outline the information that you do find, so to help you keep organized, but also to keep track of the evidence that you encounter from each resource. So I will offer some of those tips, but I do want to read the first bullet: outline your essays and arguments and insert the relevant resources that support your claims. So I'll be talking about how to identify the main topics or the claims for each of your resources, and how you can then use that in your outline to make sure that you're actually using these resources. So being organized is very important. And we all have different styles. So hopefully the suggestions I offer today, everyone can find something in them to use. But I don't expect everyone to use all of them all the time. So I really am, a lot of us are visual learners, and I think especially when doing research, it can be very beneficial if students utilize not only the concepts that they're exploring or are going to be diving into in their writing or explaining in their presentations, but also the relationships between them. And so the reason why I mentioned that is because I think students, it is expected of students to not only be able to research their topic on their own and be exposed to credible information that is useful for what they need, but also that they can uncover within that, kind of like the layers of the onion, right? The main topics and the subtopics and the main themes. So a graphic like this, I think, can help a student do this. Not necessarily, this is an example I have here on the slide, not necessarily one that's already filled out. So one that would be empty, and then one would be using that and filling it out as they go through the process. So they could refer back to this as they continue on that process. That's the idea that I had with this slide. So creating these relationships and being able to explain their relevancy and how one affects the other, or how one influences the other, and how they're related and why they're related, are all essential points that I think for student scholarly achievement is universally accepted. So concept maps, one suggestion. Here's the relationship part, right? So first there is the discovery and learning about new concepts related to your topic. And I mentioned this when students are searching, right? I highlighted, or I emphasize, the need to have an open mind to keep new possibilities open. And so as one discovers new things as they're doing research and reading, they are, in essence, paving the road for their conclusion, right? For their understanding. So as one does this, establishing the relevance and the relationships, making it logical, making it understandable, reasonable, those are all characteristics of what one should expect when establishing these types of relationships. Particularly for students, in that they are on target, on topic. It makes sense what they're writing, what they're saying, and it's backed up by credible information, and they're addressing the subtopics, right, that may exist in that area that they're researching. So all in all, these relationships should be used to establish the logic, purpose, and the relevance of their argument, of their paper, of their research. So this is something more general for students to keep in mind throughout the process, right? Is how is the new information I'm encountering relate to my research question, for example? This is something that one should be mindful of throughout the whole process. This may be obvious, but I still think it's worth repeating, and that is students should learn how to take good notes. And here's the organization part again, right? And use outlines to organize. You may not have to use outlines. You could use the concept map of the graphic there, but some kind of tool that helps you identify the key points and put them in some kind of sequential order that you wish to highlight. So we've done presentations before on how to write notes. You can find that on our page that I referenced at the beginning. And so I'm just summarizing some of the key points that we mentioned during that presentation. And on the top right, you see there a couple of pointers, right? Self-monitor, annotate, don't just highlight. Annotate means to write notes. I think we should encourage our students to write, not necessarily in their textbooks, unless they own it, but to have a habit of coming up with margin notes or questions or topics that they think of as they're reading, as they're writing. So annotation should be a part of this organization. Develop some kind of system, right, where you identify the key ideas, the major points. You define the terminology and the key words. You make the connections, for example, the cause and effect, and that you ask questions. That, in summary, is my system that I try to always keep in mind when I'm going through a research process. That then once I have a system like that, it makes putting all these pieces together much more easier. So if you're organized from the beginning, this should not be a big deal. But if you're not organized, then where do you start, right? So in the last part here, the last couple of parts, summarizing your own words and use this to test yourself. That's really what I like to do when I am a student or I'm learning a new concept is I challenge myself to summarize either in writing in my own words or in my own thoughts in my head what it was that I just read and what are the main points. Sometimes students need help with that. Sometimes they're overwhelmed thinking they need to write everything down or they need to memorize everything. And for certain classes, that may be true. Okay, for science, I imagine math, those are the tougher subjects. And so I'm not going to speak to them. That may be the case, that may still work for those classes. But for the ones where you're doing research and writing and critical thinking, I think the ability to decipher the important message of each resource is a good way to keep organized. And so, and with that, to demonstrate your critical thinking as you not only mention and highlight these topics in your writing, but you also ask hard questions. In other words, you demonstrate that you're actually thinking out loud and you include that thinking process in your writing. You know, you want that part to come out. So, and these are just some suggestions on the bottom right on how to be better organized and keep good notes. And that is to, you know, if you want to use the outline or the graphic map, how do you keep main topics? Where do you list your subtopics? And then as you establish these, where are your supporting thoughts or facts? and then all other details that follow off to that. That kind of gives a hierarchy for me of what I'm looking for, right? The main points, the sub points, and then it goes down to the thoughts and facts and further details. So that's what I hope students get out of this presentation, that with being better organized and having these tools that help you stay organized, you're able to come to these conclusions. You're able to create the structure that is needed for you to demonstrate your critical thinking and your ability to do the research well. Another assignment suggestion that I have, and it's been around for many years, and that is the annotated bibliography. If it's done well, it is actually the blueprint of my paper. And what I mean by that is that I have my, let's for example say I have my stack of resources, right? I have a folder full of my articles, and then the notes perhaps of the books that I'm referencing or using. And then I've talked about how to bring out the main topics of each of those, and I write those on the front page. If not, I write that somewhere to have handy, because eventually I would like to get to this point. It's a lot of work, but it's very useful. You may not like doing this, but I think if you've never tried it, it's worth giving it a try. So I recommend the annotated bibliography. What is it? Well, I think most of us know what a bibliography is, right? The annotation is just a step further than just listing your references. It's actually, in your own words, writing very briefly what the main topics of that research or resource are, and more specifically, you could talk about the authority or the credibility of the source. Last presentation, we talked about the types of sources that are used, the primary versus secondary sources. That could be a talking point for you, or you can evaluate the resource. There's a lot of ways to do an annotated bibliography. So I'll show you some examples, and these examples have lots of information on it. Do not be overwhelmed. This is just an example, something to give you an idea of what to aim for, but don't be discouraged, because the process of the objective of an annotated bibliography is to write down the details of the text, the overview and description of the content, the critical analysis of the text, and the statement of relevance or usefulness. I have this here on the slide. I am trying to focus on number 3, the critical analysis of the text. And so if you're not organized, you're going to spend a lot of time trying to do that when you should be spending the time analyzing. So that's really where I think we want to get our students comfortable and at. And so we need to make sure we help them get here. So I encourage all instructors, but also students that have an assignment, and you may not be required to have an annotated bibliography, but I highly recommend it, because you'll see in a second how useful they can be. So don't get overwhelmed. I know there's a lot of text here, but it's text of, especially the outer, is trying to explain what's in here. This is the actual annotation, and so there's parts to it. I'm quickly going to go through them. So here's your citation. Should be straightforward, and by the way, the next and last presentation is going to be on citing, but here are some examples of the parts you want to include in the citation. Now keep in mind, this part here, which is the annotation, should be completely in the student's words, unless they are using actual quotes or paraphrasing information from their resources, that they should, as it is here noted, cite that, in-text citing. The reason why this is important, because this is like the preliminary step, students. can then use to venture out into what they want to do, whether it's writing a paper or giving a presentation. They have their own words to go by. They don't have the original resources that they would be then tempted to plagiarize by accident even. Sometimes when we're stressed, especially if we haven't been organized and it's due the next day, we may do things we don't normally want to do and take shortcuts that in the end cost us more than they benefit. So in the annotated bibliography, if you spend the time to do this with each of your resources, and then what I do when I'm ready to do my writing or a presentation, I use what I have in my annotated bibliography. And if it was something there that I needed to quote or text insight or cite in text, I have it noted here to tell me, and I have the ability to do that no problem. But all this other stuff out here, the elements of annotation, you know, if you ever have an assignment from an instructor, of course, follow what they ask, right? But here are some parts that may also be considered in the annotation that can be useful. So, for example, this bullet here talks about having a brief summary. That may be necessary, especially for bigger sources like books, right? If you're using the majority of the contents of that book, you want to have a summary of the thesis, of the argument, but you also want to have a description of the audience, how the article illuminates your bibliographic topic, the relevancy, the relationship part I was talking about, an evaluation of the source. That goes back to the previous slide about how to be critical analytically about your topic and your question. And then this last part here is how the specific article relates to another article in your bibliography. Remember the logic I was talking about? It should make sense, right? It should be logical. The progression of your writing, of your argument, of your presentation. And you do that by connecting your resources. You make them relevant. You establish the relation. You explain why and how these sources that you're using to support your claims relate to one another. You don't want to have a concept. You don't want to introduce a concept that's totally on its own. There's a word for that and I can't remember, but it all needs to be tied together, right? So the annotated bibliography helps us do that. So here's one example of what an annotated bibliography is. And so I use this one instead to, you know, it doesn't have to be that big, and it doesn't have to have those many elements. It would all depend on your topic, on the person's preference, and on the resources that they're using. So here's a very simple example, right? Of course, you're always going to have your citation, and I'll explain in the next and last presentation why, but that you simply copy from the resource that you're using. But this is really the annotation, the part that you're going to want to focus on. So these are in your own words, a brief summary, a description, and an evaluation of the resource. I think by doing these ahead of time, it not only gives content for the student to ponder, but also a solid foundation from which to venture out from there. When one is not organized and they're not utilizing tools to help them stay organized, they may not get to this point. You know, they may be rambling, for example, or ranting, whereas an annotated bibliography is meant to keep you grounded. It's meant to keep you focused on what it is you're trying to accomplish and making sure that you have the evidence to support that. So if this is the first time you're hearing about annotated bibliographies, don't be overwhelmed. Get in touch with us and we'll help you better understand this if you so desire. Attributed tags, your language arts or your English professors would love the ability of you to use attributed tags. And simply what they are short leading phrases that indicate the idea within your writing is your original idea. It is not your original idea, but somebody else's. It can be a direct quote or a restatement of idea contained, but in your own words. So this paraphrasing skill, again, is very important. The ability to paraphrase, to decipher, to break down the main parts of whatever resource a student is using, but in their own words, kind of forces them to internalize this information, if you will, right? And so attributed tags are simply words that are used to demonstrate that you are now borrowing an idea from somewhere else. You're giving the credit in a, I guess, in a stylistic kind of way, in a more sophisticated way, that you're introducing this concept, this idea that you found from some other place. So not only are you introducing it, but you're also giving the credit where it belongs. And so the attributed tags help you do such things and avoid plagiarism, which is the biggest concern, right? We don't want to, even if it's unintentional, it could happen, especially if you're stressed, if you're cut short on time. We do things we'll regret. So attributed tags is an excellent suggestion I think students should become better at, right? And I think a good source for appropriate or good use of attributed tags is the media, the print, as well as on television, because those journalists tend to use attributed tags all the time because they are always reporting, right? They're reporting on things kind of similar to what we do in research. So here in this slide, I have a couple of graphics that give you examples of attributed tags. Here's a small list of verbs commonly used and found in attributed tags. If you look at some of these, they're very similar, right? They're words that establish that you're inferring or you're referring to this new concept from this source. It's not something that you invented, created. If it is, then we're not talking about this, right? If it's your own evaluation or your own words, and that's a different part. Attributed tags are used to help you demonstrate the ability to introduce concepts and topics and ideas from outside resources that you are using to establish your credibility or relevance. So here on the right hand side, most often attributed tags begin with a sentence, but they can also appear in the middle of the sentence. So here on the left is a small list of the words. On the right is a small list of examples of the various types of ways you can use these attributive tags. And so it could be at the beginning of the sentence, it could be a part of the middle of the sentence with a quote, as number 2 shows, or it could be at the end. In essence, this is being good at this, and it takes practice, establishes not only your mastery of the content, but your creativeness and how you introduce and how you're weaving in and out of these topics, how you're aligning your resources to support your claim and your thesis. So there is not one way to do attributed tags. And I'm sure you can find these easily online with a simple search, but always, regardless of how you do it, you want to give credit to your source. And so a lot of these, the first 3 have, all 3 of these have an in-text citation. Very important. So in summary, I'm sorry, this is not, wrong one, sorry. In summary, ask yourself as you read, what are the most important details? And one only gets good at this through practice. So reading is the fundamental skill that we're talking about here. Reading comprehension, understanding what it is you're reading and deciphering that into small bits of information that you could use in your writing. So you do this for each of your resources. If there is a resource in your bibliography that you did not use in your writing, you did not reference somehow, it should not be in your bibliography. So you need to do this for each and every one of your resources that you're using. So keep that in mind. You want to highlight the areas that specifically address the resources and add to your outline if you're using that, or your concept map, so that you would then use that in your writing or your presentation or your argument, whatever it is. I put here the front cover page, and that's just my preference. So for example, remember I mentioned earlier the stack of articles in the folder that I have on my research topic. These are things that I own, that I printed, I can write on them. And what I do is on the front page, so I like to print my resources, let's just say that. On the front page is where I list these main topics. On the front page is where I jot down the main points that I'm trying to either illustrate or will use to demonstrate a claim that I make. So that when I go through my resources, the first thing I see are my notes that then tell me what that resource is all about. And the more I do that, the better I get, so that when I'm at the writing level, I already have blocks and chunks of information ready to go to use. Now I just need to fine tune how I present them, right? And that's more along the lines of your English or language arts instruction. But I really hope the several suggestions that I've offered in today's presentation kind of give you some comfort in knowing that, you know, this research process does not have to be overwhelming. If I take the time and commit to being organized, I could break it into sizable parts that will not make it overwhelming. And so that when I get to the end of where I need to be, which is writing, I have them all ready to go. And it's just a matter of referencing, putting them, kind of like copying and pasting, right, in Word. Once you have all this information down, when you're ready to write, you have your introduction, your body, your conclusion, whatever aspects you're using in your writing, you have already these bits of information ready to go. And if you have used an annotated bibliography, you're even that much closer because you've already done the work to synthesize what that resource is all about. So in summary, that's what today's presentation was about. Are there any questions? I hear none. I see none. So that was the 5th presentation in our series. The 6th and last one will be in a couple of weeks, citing and ethics. So I invite you to come for that as well. There are no questions. I thank you for your presence and wish you the best of luck.